go out there and do their thing because they respond to conditions. So it actually sets up for us a whole new way of thinking about how we stimulate these sorts of new opportunities. Because what we're really talking about in this particular example, if I gave it to you as electricity, I mean, what is the conventional thinking at the moment is to save electricity. Now, I understand that. I do that. We save electricity. Another part of me says I want to use as much electricity as possible. Because my view, we live in an electric world. You know, electricity is a really clean energy source, and everyone uses it. Everyone's got it. Pretty easy to get. Legacy systems we can use. The problem is how we generate it, not with electricity. So in Australia, what's happening there is we have an ETS, an emissions trading scheme that comes in that actually creates stranded assets or trade-impacted industries that cannot operate anymore if you put a carbon trading cap on them. And they have to trade in carbon. So it sends them scurrying for, like, what are we going to do? Now, it only represents 1,500 businesses out of 7 million businesses. But they're pretty important businesses. These are the generators, because we have most of our stuff is a split system. Generate, aggregate and distribute, and at the top level we have retailers. These guys here don't care where the stuff comes from, as long as we can distribute, aggregate, and we can actually sell it up here. So how do we generate it? Now, where the generation is going is to small-based entrepreneurs putting photovoltaic cells up on top of people's roofs. I'll give you an example. We just bought a new house in a place called Wood End. A little company called Enviromate rings me up, or I ring them up, go online, I book an appointment, they come and do an energy assessment. It costs $265, which the government pays for. They, at the same time, bring an array of services. Photovoltaic cells, solar hot water, black water refinement, and I won't tell you what black water is, by the way, but grey water, you name it, they'll actually give you an assessment. They then do that assessment, and in this particular case, the government is one stimulator, just one little stimulation, on 70,000 loans to test it out, will give a $10,000 interest-free loan for you to reorient your particular property to what you're talking about there. Now, that has spawned a huge amount of investment at the small-scale level, the very, very small level. It's actually flipped the aggregators, because all of a sudden the aggregators are saying, we're going to buy some electricity back that they're generating. So we get credits back. When I'm producing electricity during the day, it goes back into the grid and I get paid back. And my objective is to become self-sufficient from an electricity perspective. So all of a sudden, bring on the electricity. I want to use more electricity. To me, that's a more resilient option than actually having a way of reducing those sorts of things down. Now, if I actually just added another little sort of strain into this, that Australia's got a choice to make, bring an agrarian, a large agriculture, whether we go into biofuels. Now, biofuels actually adds another level of complexity that I'm not too sure.
Les, let's hold that one till later.
Sure, okay.
Okay. Steve, just to kind of get your perspective on what this all means to you and Stamford, and what are some of the opportunities that you're chasing that you see in these conditions?
Oh. Well, I am interested in black water refinement. We'll talk about that another time. Thank you for having us here today.
Z or something like that.
The Reinventing Stamford initiative up to this point has dealt with a lot of issues besides the topic of discussion today. So there are a lot of elements here. There's education and mobility and housing, place, et cetera, that Kip's alluded to. Today's focus is trying to think about how all those elements come together to create an environment that supports innovation, that helps attract entrepreneurs and capital. And I think that the hypothesis that we started this discussion with is that Stamford's been a very successful place for a long time, but this last iteration of the economy showed us that we were probably a little too dependent upon big companies in a couple of sectors, financial services and information services, for instance. And probably didn't have enough of a diverse base of smaller, earlier stage companies. And some of that was from the success that the whole region had, but there did seem to be a gap in this economy versus some other places you look, whether it might be Boston or Silicon Valley, Boulder or Austin. They seem to have a more vibrant early stage startup capacity. So Kip and I have had a conversation going and have thought about the Stamford Innovation Center as a vehicle to start driving more of that activity across the region. From my background, I was at GE for a number of years and have been in venture capital for a long time, and have played across a number of sectors. And so when I think about the opportunities and kind of building on your circumstances framework, there are areas that seem very logical to me that we should be successful in. I don't think Stamford is going to be a place that launches new technologies as pure technologies. We don't have a research university here. We don't have the natural asset base to play in the same game of biotech or energy tech that some of the places like, say, Stanford or MIT have. But what we do have in Fairfield County and in Stanford is incredible access to capital, a lot of talented executives and professionals who've been working for a long time in a number of different sectors. And we have a continual source of young people coming into this economy as well. And I think the way for Stanford to go forward is to wrap those capabilities, people, service, capital, marketing, and wrap that around technologies and take that to market. And I think that's generally probably the most likely avenue for success. I think there are areas like energy efficiency that public policy is starting to line up on. And you look at the real estate in this country and the gap between the efficiency of most of the existing plant and where we'd like to get it to, and models that can come together to put together capital, technology, and service to go after that market are a logical area for us to look at. Another area is the shift from a carbon-based food system to a low-carbon-based food system. And you're seeing a lot of that activity in the region here as people start to change their diet and move away from food that is primarily distribution, marketing, and packaging, and where more of the dollars are going directly to the source of production. And that production is coming closer to the individual. And a lot of that's tied up into the cost of a carbon-based food system, but a lot of it's tied up into people's growing awareness of taking personal accountability and responsibility for what they put into their bodies. And so whether it's food or whether it's healthcare, there are a lot of individually empowered business models that deal with that aspect. We still have great access to media, and I don't think any of us know how the whole media industry is going to evolve over the next few years. But there are clearly issues like what's going to happen to journalism and how does that resolve itself over time. There's certainly a market out there for quality journalism, so how does that business get decoupled from its traditional delivery systems like newspapers and maybe get rebuilt? There's increasingly the need for dependable, objective, trusted third parties that can help measure not only financial outcomes but also environmental outcomes and social outcomes as these elements of economic activity get priced into the goods and services that we buy. And along those lines, a need for a whole another generation of scorekeeping beyond FASB, which I think is a Stanford homegrown measure, but one that is lacking in its dimensionality. And I think from a big picture standpoint, there's no reason why Stanford can't be a driver of global development and take a lot of the energy technologies, food technologies, and so forth, and deploy them to off-grid communities around the world where there is huge need for development dollars in a low-carbon type of environment. So those are some of the ideas we have.
Right. Then just shifting gears a bit, for those of you who have read John's book, he really talks about the city as a creative habitat.